Hello, and today we'll be playing the newest update of Devil's Gambit. We open our eyes, and the me that breathes, Kagan, looks furious. It makes sense though. I have controlled the body, so he thinks I tricked him and stole it. I raise my left hand and look at it, then I extend it towards him after a moment of staring, as if he just finished deciphering an ancient instinct. He grabs it with his right hand. The connection lasts but a second. It's like facing through somebody and being filled with thoughts that are not yours at the same time. They are not mine, but his. The body is his. He stares at our form with his mouth agape and then at me, transparent as I am. The cyclical lethargy will never return. We've agreed the body is ours to share, even if I still have to find a new sacred name. We no longer need to pull each other under the water's surface. I hope he can trust me. When Arrogant sees we aren't falling asleep and sees there's nothing he can discern as unusual anymore, he tells the Duke he keeps looking at us through that crystal of his was useless. Then Leopoldino decides playtime is over. There's no goodbyes or fanfare, but a tin man that wakes us up, takes us downstairs and pushes us into a carriage alongside the barristers. When I approaches, Arrogant, the doctor, is quiet. He has given up on looking because even he sees by now nothing will come from it. Then Hector is quiet and is looking down with a sad face. It's weird. I wanted to sink my claws into Leopoldino's neck, or at least to be free of him, but now that I'm here, I realize I'm sad too. I still don't want Hector's time in Renai to end. I don't want it to ever end. He should stop whatever he thinks he's doing, but his father has spent every day here with me. The good parts of these last 2 years can remain. But they can't. Later, Arrogant goes to visit the Maker, and a quick kill arrows, a quick stop to say goodbye, he says. He means Hector should do the same, and leaves us alone for a bit. When will you come back? Huh? I'm not sure. I heard Dad used to come to Renai pretty often when he was younger, but he hasn't visited in a while. You don't need him to come here, you know. Ooh. When you grow up, you'll be able to do anything you want. Hector chuckles. Yes, I suppose I will. I'd like to be able to return faster, but once I become a doctor, I could come and go as I please. I wouldn't need him to take me anywhere. That's what I like to hear. I grab him into a chokehold and he pretends to fight back. When it's time to take the carrots back home, he looks a lot more cheerful. We both know he'll come back, even if it takes a bit longer. There's no reason to be sad. Yes, we'll be together again in no time. Once he's become a doctor, once he steps out his father's saddle. The carriage homes arrives at the center of the village, and that's when Arrogant tells me Hector needs to leave. There's neither warmth nor spite in his voice, nor is he too quick to step in. But when he gets in, I hear the coins in his purse and a smile on his face. It is only when the doors close and I see the carriage growing tiny in the distance that I realize that he never said goodbye. Adjusting to life in Renai was difficult, and not just because of Ryan. It was me who had to ask the villagers what had become of Aaron after we couldn't find him at the church, since Ryan's first instinct was to jump to the clock. It was me who had to ask the villagers what had become of Aaron after we couldn't find him at the church, since Ryan's first instinct was to jump and tear claw to claw. We were standing right outside the building, looking rather lost despite the familiar streets, when I stopped an older wolf just passing by. Suddenly I realized I was furrowing my eyebrows and balling my fists. I froze up, unsure of why I was so angry. The wolf gasped because he recognized me, and then chuckled because he figured I was grumpy that Aaron wasn't where I expected him to be. Seeing that, I relaxed just a bit and asked him about Aaron's whereabouts. Later on, when we were walking to the old swine, Ryan wanted a turn with the body. Are you sure? Weren't you afraid he will treat you like a monster? Yes, but he's the only one that tried to help me. I was still shaken from that sudden rage, and to be honest, he was the one looking forward the most to seeing him again, so I let him. Our steps grew quicker and quicker until we were running through the forest, the trees and stones parted in our wake, not wanting to bother us. When we arrived at the shrine, Ryan knocked on the door and called Aaron's name. Word clattered behind the door. We heard stopping footsteps approaching, and then the door opened violently. Aaron looked at us in shock. Snowball. Ryan jumped and clinged to his chest. Aaron laughed, hugging him tight. Even I felt a bit of the warmth of that moment, as Aaron fell to his knees and cradled our head on the nook of his neck. He looked like he couldn't believe it, and kept squeezing Ryan's shoulder as if trying to confirm he really was there, that he wasn't an illusion that would disappear at any second. And then he smiled, and he cried as did Ryan. I just watched with a smile at first, but then countless worries and considerations began filling my mind. Seeing Ryan be so emotional, so happy, made me wonder how I would behave in his place. Would I have been able to give Aaron such a heartfelt reunion? I really didn't know, but the idea I couldn't made the emptiness in my heart feel so much more vast. And also, I realized it would soon be time to tell Aaron what happened at the mansion, but no matter how much I thought about it, my mind was blank. But I have to figure something out eventually. He brought us into the little home he had made out of the temple and sat us in front of the table as he threw everything he could find into his cauldron to make an improvised stew for us. I miss you so much, Snowball. It's been lonely without you, and he trolled off. But it's great to have you back. I'm sorry I couldn't break you out in the end. I wanted to go back, but I couldn't do it alone. Ryan felt so warm he forgot how to speak for a moment. I had to reach up and pull at his leg to remind him to say something. You did what you could. Guess so. Aaron patted us in the head as he put the stew in front of us. Ryan devoured it as if that was his first serving of real food in years. The older wolf laughed, amused, but I imagined also relieved to see him in such good spirits. After eating, Ryan began talking about Hector. At first he painted a rather pathetic picture. Lying down and staring at the ceiling, he recalled the day they met and how he punched him into the ground. But Hector was also good at foraging. Despite how treacherous Renai's forage is, he never needed help finding his way except in the dark. He knew about magic and concoctions that Ryan couldn't even grasp. And he had fortitude that rivaled our own. In Ryan's own words, having survived being drowned by his father, his suffocating presence that seeked to snuff out anything that didn't fit his masterpiece. And then, once the sun fell, we went to sleep and Ryan began crying under the seats. Aaron stayed by his side to comfort him. I didn't think about it back then, but until that moment, he had never been given a moment to grieve our parents. He always tried to appear strong, even in front of Hector, especially in front of Hector. Before returning to Irnan, I had planned to tell him about Wyan as soon as possible, but after a few days of starting to live with him, I found myself hesitating to say anything. I suppose I too was worried about how he'd react to the information. That and Wyan just wanted to go back to being a kid, and in the back of my mind, I felt that telling the truth would somehow put an end to it again. Those carefree days interrupted only by sudden tears that came out of nowhere and ended just as suddenly could not exist alongside what we had become. We were living on borrowed time. But the truth is a capricious thing that easily slips from between your fingers when you feel like it. Such was the case the first time we tried to do archery practice since our return. With some effort, I was able to notch the arrow and hook my finger on the string, and I was still capable of pulling it with my back, but letting go of the string and arrow at the same time was impossible. Our aim was terrible. I knew what was going wrong. This was a rookie mistake, but no amount of focus or practice was able to change it. Aaron was watching us attentively, and quickly realized it wasn't that I was just out of practice. He told me to stop, and inspected my hand. What's wrong? What happened to your hand? It looks fine, but I don't know. It's been like this for a while. Aaron was staring hard, but then just told me to take a break and try again later. That suspicious look didn't leave him until night, however. That night, just as we were about to fall asleep, we heard him suffer as he got up from bed. I shut my eyes hard and waited as I heard him move around the room, trying to decipher what he was doing all the while. Wyan was paralyzed like a frightened animal. Then there was a faint glow, the sound of the door opening and closing, and footsteps fading into the distance. Once it was quiet, I got up and took a peek outside. An orange light was coming out of the windows of the shack next to the shrine. Aaron spent a good part of the following night studying the old text, searching for something that would either alleviate or confirm his worst fears. Wyan kept alternating between saying that he must have noticed something was up and that he would have asked us about it already if that was the case. But I was certain what little childhood Wyan had been able to enjoy would soon end once more. One day after breakfast, he told me we needed to talk and asked me to sit with him at the table. That was when I knew the moment had come. Snowball, how are your hands? Still the same, why? He scratched his head, struggling to find the words. I don't know how else to put it, but did the Duke do anything to you? Did he make you touch something strange? I looked at my hands as they balled into fists. On my lap, my eyes were wide open and my throat closed itself. Snowball. But in the end, I got the words out. He made the doctors pierce us with these needles, me and the other wolves too. When I began talking, I couldn't stop, not even Wyan howling for me to stop fazed me. The melting test cell checks, Wyan, how we eventually learned to exchange for control of the body. At first, I saw panic in Aaron's face, then rage, then murderous intent as he eyed his bow. And yet, once I was done, when there was nothing else to say, he approached me and hugged me. I hadn't realized how much I was shaking. I swear if that bastard ever tries to touch you again, I'll kill him. There's nothing to fear now. There's nothing to fear. I don't remember what happened next, and neither does Wyan. The next thing I knew, I was lying in bed, and the sun had already surpassed its peak and was coming down. Aaron had brought one of his books from the sack. Snowball, are you feeling better? You just began choking. And then you began crying and crying until you fell asleep. Wine was the one that had been crying, so I wondered if he had taken control somehow. But I didn't think it had been intentional. Just because I couldn't feel my emotions anymore, it didn't mean they didn't exist. They just weren't with Wine now. So once they bubbled up and overflowed, they forced him to come up as well. At least that's how I eventually come to rationalize those unintentional switches, or the times we were able to hold the other's neck. I think so. How about Wine? Or are you Wine? Wine was curled into a ball just out of the corner of my eye. He wasn't looking or talking to me. He wasn't exactly angry at me, but he clearly didn't want to talk after I ignored him earlier. I'm kinda, and Wine is. He's feeling grumpy right now. What is that? I was hoping to show you this. The book was open in a passage that talked about the changes that the eye could force upon a wolf. It said its influence reached the hands first because it's through our hands that nature's essence flows to create magic. When you no longer belong to nature, when you're claimed by a different god, your capacity to produce nature's magic diminishes or even disappears, and by changing our essence, it affects how we interact with the world. Suddenly, I remembered my biological father mentioning something similar when I was younger. Aaron then changed to a different page. I couldn't believe it at first, but it was the only thing that made sense. But now that I know of Hawaiian, there's no denying it. You two are now a salmon, wolves that were split into two cells. There used to be many of them back in the times of Oba and I, but after the wolves decoupled themselves from the eye and lost access to its essence, they couldn't create any more of them. And eventually they died out. So, what does that mean for us? Well, you and Ryan went through a lot, and you have struggled with each other, but it's good that you managed to settle those differences. I want you to know that there's nothing wrong with what you are now. This doesn't change anything for me. The Simons lived amongst the wolves for years after they departed from the heart of the valley. Times are different now, but I'm sure you two can be happy, him and I. Ryan never formally introduced himself. Aaron promised us love and safety, but an irrational part of him was still afraid of betrayal. But Aaron was perceptive enough to begin telling us apart after only a few days, and then he just began calling Ryan by his name whenever he noticed he was in control. It caught my brother off guard the first time, but that approach did work eventually. Aaron didn't make a big deal about what we were, acting as if he had known Ryan for years, which I suppose isn't completely incorrect. Eventually, Ryan began peeking out of his cell of his own volition, although it would still take him a few years to come up with his Wanskai persona. All of us, Ryan was the most interested when it came to reading about the Simons. How did they meld their houses with trees? I'm not sure of the process, but it definitely was part of the eye's power. It's interesting that it has the power to split, but in other circumstances to fuse different things together. Perhaps it's because if something new comes out of that union, old texts like this one put a lot of emphasis on that aspect of making something new. The wolves of ancient Wanai gained significant power by letting the eye touch them, but the culture that developed around the Simons was pretty gentle. Their new siblings were like dreams come true. Through them, they became people they could only imagine otherwise. I don't think Caddy thought of me like that first. That was back then. You two will have a lot of time to come up with a dream for yourselves now. I only want to see Hector. Aaron rolled his eyes. You can dream bigger, Lion. Although Ryan huffed and stomped the floor in indignation upon learning about Aaron's exile, I thought he'd been lucky to get away with just that. Well, it made sense Lil Badino showed him mercy, considering he was afraid of what Ryan could do if he learned something had happened to Aaron. What worried me more was the possibility of Lil Badino enacting revenge now that the experiment was over, but considering that never happened, I think he just forgot about the mutt entirely. The village would send someone over every once in a while to make sure Aaron wasn't lacking anything, a responsibility that Ryan wanted to take over. Why not? I thought. We were lucky. We were living with Aaron and regularly going to town anyway. It only made sense, but Ryan didn't think it through. He wanted to be of help, but whenever we stepped into town, he'd clam up and ask me to be in control the whole time. He didn't even want to look at the other wolves. It felt strange to go to the market or talk to the other kids with a hole in my heart, feeling, whenever I looked at their faces, a distant echo rising from my depths. That once there was a boy who knew their names, who had been welcomed into their homes and played with their children, who trusted them and prayed for their help. When they dragged us into their carriage to the mansion of bondage, to the cage in the lab, to the dark cell, we prayed for they who never came, all of them traitors who abandoned us. Each and every one of us, all of us on whom the Duke experimented, of which we were the only survivors. Things will never be the same again. But those were Ryan's emotions. Though I could hear the echo of what he felt, I could not grasp it myself. So while I did not hate him, I didn't really love them either. I enjoyed their company. I liked being part of Lanai, but I didn't love them. Tracer was the only one Ryan wanted to play with. Watching them put pranks together did make me smile. It was like they picked up right from where they left off. It gave me hope that things would return to how they once were. Can I do that? Aaron was in the middle of carving a pile of wooden frogs. Ryan sat next to him, watching with wide eyes. Not sure it's a good idea. It would be good for my hands a bit. If you want to cut them, baby, why don't you practice the bow like your brother? He's almost back to where he was before. We had spent the last few weeks trying to learn to perform the finest tasks again. Aaron was exaggerating about my progress, hoping to dissuade Ryan from playing with knives. The battle's boring. I want to make statues. When Aaron understood he wouldn't get the idea out of Ryan's head, he decided it would be better to let him do it with supervision than behind his back. Aaron finished making the frogs and hung them on the trees leading to the temple. He built a sling for us and then added a bigger sling next to it so we could all play together. And finally he had a larger sculpture of our parents and put it under the frogs so that they would also welcome us every time we returned from town. Only after that, and after countless accidents with their carving knife, was Ryan able to finish his first statue, a small bezel shaped somewhat like a cube. Aaron patted his head proudly when Ryan sold it to him, but sighed when he saw Ryan place it next to a statue of our parents. Then one night we were waiting for dinner to cook when I brought up something that had been in my mind for a while. So about our hands. Is it possible for us to learn to do magic again, just like we learned how to use a bow again, or to carve? He went silent for a minute, but he but his dejected expression had already told me everything I needed to know. Magic is different. You remember those medallions your father used to work on, right? Those come from an ancient tradition of magic that was meant to solve exactly this problem. You could learn that and use magic again, but you wouldn't be able to use it in front of others if you were seen practicing such magic and an inquisitor ever caught wind of it. Well, then how will I take over the temple? To that, Aaron didn't have an answer because there wasn't one. It was going to happen. It didn't matter how I twisted the question or from which angle I approached it. I would never be a priest. It was all good, or so I thought at least, but when I went to sleep that night, I couldn't close my eyes. I was supposed to be a priest. I felt in my bones that was what I was meant to be, and not only because it was what my parents always wanted for me, but because of the connections of people on the land. The priests in these times before the earth helpers used magic in their connection to nature to protect cattle and crops. They were the ones people came to when they had problems they needed to get off their chests and had nobody else to turn to. And in Renai, they were connected to the land's forgotten history. They were the keepers of the past. It was a heavy duty, one that perhaps had been too cruel to put onto a child from such a young age, and yet now that it had been taken from me, I didn't feel any lighter, just hollow and brittle. Not many nights did I stay up past my bedtime reading. All that knowledge, all that practice, all the surgeries I had memorized had been for nothing. And the last connection with my family had been lost. Even back then, I knew it was a bad idea. But I hadn't felt that way in so long. I didn't know what to do. As days passed and that emptiness did nothing but keep eating away at my chest, and reached out to Ryan's hand and passed that final burden onto him. Only then did the pain grow dull, the memories of the surgeries growing blurry as it did. I don't know when Ryan noticed what happened. It may have been the fact he suddenly was interested in Ernest's book collection, despite having no interest whatsoever in reading until then. Or perhaps the pain of knowing he wouldn't be Renai's priest began eating away at him too. One day he went outside and curled up by the statue of our parents to confront me about it. Hugging his knees and with eyes half open, he spoke to me. "You did it again, didn't you?" "Come on, I know you did." Wine wasn't looking for an explanation because he didn't need one. With those feelings in him, he immediately understood why I had done it. And to my surprise, he didn't resent me nor curse me for making him carry yet another burden. What he wanted was, "Say something. I'm sorry." "It's all good. I'll accept this burden one last time, but it stings. You need to promise me something." "What?" "Never do it again. I want to be Ryan, and Kaga needs to be Kaga. Don't even try, okay?" "But I've never done that to you. I don't even know if I can because I've never tried. I never wanted to, and much less now. No matter how long it takes for him to come back, I want Hector to recognize me, and I know he will. But not if I'm a different person by then. So, let me be myself." Hector is not here, yet I can find him in so many places. He's in the water's reflection when we bathe or clean our clothes. His voice is still carried by the wind. Foraging for fruits brings back memories of him. Hector is everywhere. When I close my eyes, I see him in the back of my eyelids. He's in my dreams too. Sometimes I even see him in in the black and white of my fur. But he's been away for a long time. With every day, his reflection becomes fuzzier. his voice fainter, and the nuts and berries don't remember him as much. When I tell Aaron, he says to send him a letter. Of course, obviously his words alone may not be enough to restore his presence in all things, but they will make him last stronger. Even Concan helps. He doesn't show it as much, but I know he's looking forward to the next time we see Hector. We don't know where Oban is, or Oban is. It's somewhere in the Far East, at least 2 weeks away by carriage. Much longer if you're walking. The letter man nods and tells me to let him handle it. And so we wait. Every day we look around for newly arrived carriages. We wait for the letter man's knock on the door every moment. We wait. Come back soon, Hector. The notion that you could cut away parts of you one at a time at such a rate that you barely notice those things are missing until you are at the brink of vanishing and may be concerned. I'd like to think that, even if Ryan hadn't forbidden it, I would have never burdened him again, but I'm not so sure. Much like I once stopped him from slitting his throat with a knife that day, he might have stopped me from eventually doing something irreversible. Giving him the priest part of me already would have consequences beyond my imagination. It started around a year after we returned to town. By then I had gotten a job as a helping hand at Teresa's family farm. Wine, absorbed in his rejection of Ranai, had taken refuge in his new interest in priesthood. It was a way both to entertain himself and to remember the happy times when our parents were around. As I helped Teresa's dad, he mumbled to himself the names of runes or old stories he had read. Some nights, upon returning to the shrine, Aaron would teach him about the summons and their deceitful spells to ours. Although they had little practical use for us at the time, Wine began practicing some of the simpler sigils that were used as replacement for the more mundane nature magic. Thanks to him, drying our clothes went from taking hours or even days when there was bad weather to just a few minutes, so I was very grateful for that. Until one day his fur began changing. It was subtle at first, but eventually it was obvious that the separation between the black and white layers of his fur was disappearing, becoming a dark shade of gray. But whenever I was in control, I looked as I always have. Aaron looked worried at first, but it did not take him long to realize the answer. He took us to the swing outside the shrine as we walked. He took us to the swing outside the shrine as we talked. Ryan, Concan, you remember the salmon trade, don't you? Your parents took you there a few times. Yes, of course. Do you remember how the dead resting there looked? Didn't some of them look unusual? Right, one of them had 4 legs. Yes, you see, when one becomes a shaman, they gain a power to change their shape. For most, one part will retain the original appearance, and the other will gain a new form. And it seems that process has started with you. And it seems that process has started for you. Aaron's eyes betrayed his worry, and I felt the same, but Wine had a sorry look, lost in the fantasy of finally becoming a proper salmon, with demonic look and everything. How do you think I'll change, teacher? Will I gain wings, or maybe horns, or extra arms? It's hard to say, but more importantly, I don't think you realize what this means, Ryan. What? If you change and become more demonic, if you look visibly touched by the eye, you may not be able to show yourself in front of others anymore. You realize that, right? Ryan thought about that for about 3 seconds before shrugging. It'll be fine as long as you let me see Hector. Aaron put his fingers on his brow in consternation. Seeing Ryan being so childish made me angry then. I didn't understand how he could be so blind. Not talking even to Teresa, only able to exist inside the old swine's walls or hidden somewhere in the forest. It was like being locked up in Leo Bedino's mansion again. I didn't want that for him. This had only started when he became obsessed with Renai's legends, almost as if his body was responding to his mind. So surely there could be a way to reverse it, or at least prevent more changes. Later that night, when Aaron was already snoring, I turned to Ryan and told him what was in my mind. That it wasn't too late, that I was even willing to take back the risk to become a priest if it meant him being free. He was stunned into silence, but after a moment he frowned and shook his head. Maybe you're right, Cady, but I need to do this. Why? I don't get it. Because who says there won't come a day the Duke tries to take from us again? Aaron, Hector, Tracer. He could take them all away if he wanted. But not if I'm a Simon. Once I have strong magic, once he sees me as a demon, he'll think twice before trusting us or anyone else ever again. I don't know how to respond. Hidden between his words was a fear so intense that nothing I said would have soothed it. All I could do was go back to sleep, praying that time would someday heal Ryan's wounds. A few days later, I was sitting on my side of the swing, just looking at the blue sky when Aaron returned from gathering some berries. He took down the basket and offered me some as if they were candy. Head in the clouds, Snowball. Mm-hmm. It's something the matter. I was just thinking about the other wolves that were in the mansion with me. Ah yes, nature bless their souls. I guess we were lucky to not end like them. Ryan's presence steered. His now red eyes turned from the frogs to me. Were they buried? Back when I was still in town, no. The families were still holding on to the hope they were alive. But that might have changed now that you two are the only ones to return. Suddenly, I felt wine close to my ear. It would be nice if they all got a proper burial. They were scary, but they were just trying to be nice to us. It wasn't a bad idea. I hope me and Ryan, as well as the victims' souls which I prayed hadn't fallen into the ice touch, would find some peace from it. Later I asked Tracy about it. She closed her eyes and looked up for a moment, and then snapped her fingers. Why? One of the families picked this little hill in the forest and made a tomb there not too long ago. But why do you ask, Kaidan? You've been acting all weird and boring lately, and now you bring this up out of nowhere. Is something up? No, sorry. I've been in a strange mood, I guess. I can tell that much. I'm asking about this because I'd like to make sure all of them get a burial, but I don't know how many of them there were, let alone their names. She brought her hand to her chin. Cady, well, I don't remember everyone's name right now, but if I ask around, I'm sure that'll jog my memory. There was a lot of talk about the disappearances right after that happened. Really? You'll help? Yep. I can't stand seeing you be such a sad sack anymore, so promise me you'll chill up after, okay? I'll try. That answer didn't satisfy her. but she kept her word nonetheless. She had procured 15 names for me by next week. I wanted to buy each of them a headstone, but Tressa shut down the idea fast. It would take us years to earn enough money for all of them. That same day I asked Aaron if I could borrow his axe. I had seen the priest do it countless times before. Make a knot on the side, cut it thin, get out of the way when it's about to fall. Easy. Each chop was accompanied by a sound like an explosion and bark and chunks of wood falling everywhere. It felt almost sacrilegious to take so violently from the forest I had been raised to respect my whole life. But nature didn't care about taking by force, and seemingly neither did I. After a few minutes, my hands hurt and I had to take a break before finishing the job. Afterwards, Aaron helped me cut the trunk into pieces, and from those Ryan carved 15 wolf statues across 3 months, each with one of the victims' names engraved in it. The day everything was ready, Tressa stopped by the shrine, and we set off towards the hill. Tressa led our strange little group, with Aaron following close behind, carrying a bag with half of the statues and another with the implements he'd used to perform the last rites, and me carrying the rest. The sun blinded us as we climbed the hill, the saddles at our feet marching onwards with a solemn resolve. The grave that had already been there was a tiny thing. It was covered in leaves, and I felt bad leaving the statue in front of it, because his ears were tall enough to cover part of the name engraved in the stone. We pushed the leaves away, sending them dancing into the air. Aaron dug holes in the form of a semicircle, and we buried the base of the statues in them. We ended up putting the one that corresponded to the grave right next to it. When everything was ready, Aaron took out a small bowl and a flask from his bag. "What's that?" "A mix of salt, water, and razor wood. In olden times, they used this mixture to quell the regrets of those who were lost to the dangers of the valley. Of course, they died because of the Duke, but it shall serve the same purpose. That is to say, if a body was contaminated, it would help prevent the corruption from spreading. It began being used during the Solomon funerals, but as they pivoted towards the surgeons to cleanse its influence, it became a mostly symbolic tradition. In that sense, it truly was fitting for this funeral without relatives or bodies. Just 3 people who had lost friends and family, and even if Tressa didn't know everything, she knew we had lost our parents, and seeing what she interpreted as me being sad wasn't easy for her either. Ryan's attention intensified as Aaron took the bowl in both hands and raised it high up, as if asking the sun to bless it. He then walked around us, carefully letting the mixture drip as he recited a prayer for the dead. The trail left by the mixture formed a circle to complement the statue's semicircle. O nature, save their souls from the oblivion of truth. Let them live forever more with us. Alois, Albi, Kate, Elva, Philem, Viana, Garvin, Liam, Mara, Nevin, Orla, Orin, Rowan, Son, and Ulick. Rest easy, knowing we shall keep you alive in our hearts. Your dreams shall be endless. Why do you think we survived and not them? I don't know. I don't know if we survived either. What do you mean? You said it yourself. If you are a valley creature, then what am I? My name is Kagan, but that's only because we agreed it is. And I look like Kagan, but that might not have been the case if things played out just a little differently. When I think back to the memories from before we were taken to the mansion, none of them feel like they belong to me. It doesn't feel like they're mine. We were both the same, two branches growing off the tree they call kagan. Caddy, there should be one more statue here. Enders placing his hand on my shoulder brought me back to reality. I hadn't noticed until then that I had been trembling. Everything's alright, Snowball. Yes. Come on, at least try a bit harder to lie. You kids did a good thing. I want you to know that. But for now, let's go. I'll make you some of your favorite stew, okay? Okay. I feel him in the motion of my hands, the curves and creases of his face, the roundness of his shape, the softness of his embrace. Through chisel, I pluck him from my memories, and although he's smooth rather than soft, I can hold him in my hand. I repeat the same movements like ripples traveling across 3 years. But little by little they fade, my movements wane, and I stare at the incomplete statue and see a face I don't recognize. When Hector comes back, I might not recognize his face, right? But how much has he grown up since I last saw him? Why isn't he answering? Did something happen? Is he alright? But I don't want anything to happen to Hector, but why else has he not responded yet? I've seen letter after letter after letter. Hector, where are you? Where have you gone? For how much longer will you keep me waiting? I made sure I'm myself. You knew me as Kaga, but I'm actually Ryan. I hope to tell you next time we meet. Where are you? Not even the movement of my arm can I find you any longer. Hector, Hector. At table foots, the chisel stuck in the wall. Jaws fall off their cells and smash. Aaron comes in with wide eyes. Mom, Dad, where are you? Hector, don't leave me either. Come back. 2 arms wrap around me. I fight and thrash around, but warm words soothe the sadness only a little, but just enough that my arms drop and I cry on teacher's chest. It's so bitter and boring and lonely here. I need out. I want to see him again. Don't leave me alone again. Don't abandon me again. I'll go through every lift for you. I'll be as strong as you want for you. So why are you disappearing from everywhere? I didn't have a clue about what happened. Ryan was quietly, if with a somewhat sour expression, sculpting one of his statuettes, and then in the blink of an eye, the old swine was a mess, and Dad was comforting him. Ryan, what's wrong? Between cries, he kept repeating the same things. Don't abandon me. Where are you, Mom, Dad, Hector? Aaron, ever the sturdy tree, was nonetheless tearing up as he took in the pain of the wolf he had come to see as his son. I'm here, Ryan. Nobody else is going away, I promise. Ryan, there must be an explanation. Maybe if we ask the mailman, we'll find out what's happening. I didn't know if he was actually listening, but that did seem to calm him down a little. The one we called the mailman didn't actually deliver any letters. Rather, he was one of those connected people in touch with Renai's trading partners. Whenever he knew a caravan was heading a certain way, he'd give them the mail to deliver it during their travels. He was very reliable, all things considered. When we went to ask him about his letters, he had no clue what could have happened for the letters to be delivered. But after asking for some more details, his eyes opened wide with realization. How did I not notice? That region you're describing has been struck by a terrible plague. I can try to find out more, but most likely my partners have been avoiding the area. or this Hector person has fallen victim to a plague. My hands froze and I broke in a cold sweat. My stomach turned almost as if Wyan was trying to whip himself out of my body to interrogate the man himself. For the first time in years, I felt again the sleepiness of the cyclic lethargy. When the man reached for my shoulder, I slapped his hand away and ran. I wasn't going anywhere. My mind had gone blank. With the sound of Wyan's howling, it wasn't rage or even sadness behind it, but it's pure panic. I wasn't going anywhere. My mind had gone blank with the sound of Wyan's howling. It wasn't rage or even sadness behind it, but pure panic. Once I was deep enough in the forest, he came out. He burst out of my chest and began punching and clawing at his surroundings, letting out snarls that after a while began sounding like words. He's wrong. Hector's alright. He just. He dug his claws deep into the bark, frustrated and desperate for closeness, and I felt ashamed that I had failed him. I had overlooked how lonely Wyan felt, foolishly believing he'd be happy just waiting for Hector as long as he had my company and earnings. Wyan hadn't complained, but he wanted to be strong so that nobody would hurt him again. So of course he wouldn't show vulnerability, not even to us. And now there was a possibility that Hector would never return to Renai. I just knew this couldn't keep going. Something needed to change. Eventually, Wyan exhausted himself to the point he curled into a ball under the tree and fell asleep. Only then was I able to take back control. I stayed there, staring at the claw marks Wyan had made and the blood under my claws. I would say I was considering my options, but there really was only one that I could think of. Rather, I was indecisive between that option and simply waiting. It was the guilt of having allowed Wyan to wait all by himself that drove me to act a bit reckless that day, but I don't regret that choice. I headed back into town, and from there I kept walking until I reached the outskirts and headed down and rode towards a certain farm. A wolf leading some beasts spotted me and greeted me. "Hello, sir. Is Trace around?" He called out for her. A few minutes later, she came prancing from the house. "Hi, Kagan. Oh, you look like crap. What happened?" "I'll tell you, but first, can you come to the shrine? I'd rather talk there." "Oh, Tracer, what brings you here today?" "Caddy wants to talk about something, but he's being all secretive. That's all it takes for Aaron to catch up with what I'm doing." "That's so. Are you sure, Snowball?" I got close and whispered. Aaron then noticed a dry blood under my claws. "What happened?" Wyan panicked when we went to the mailman. "I don't know if Hector's coming back, but I can't bear to see him alone anymore. Please let him have a fun." "Snowball, are you aware of what you're dragging her into?" "Into a life of into a life as our accomplice, into a world of which I could not have specified, but which I already fathomed. God, she would go on to become our co-conspirator, even after the birth of her children." "Yes, but what other choice do I have?" After a moment, Dad nodded. Tracer tilted her head, puzzled. "What are you two whispering about?" "Tracer, you see, I've been hiding something from you." "Oh? You got a crush on me?" "No, there's two of me." "What do you mean?" I balled my fist as I contemplated how to tell Tracer that I was no longer who she thought I was, but when faced with the task of explaining my own existence, my mind went blank. Would telling her I was Kagan and him Wyan be enough? Of course not. Instead, I began flipping through Many words, a mirror, a half, a branch, splitting. But none of it seemed appropriate. None of it encompassed me. Reaching under the surface, I stroked Ryan's ears. His eyes opened ever so slightly. Ryan, are you awake? Yeah. Tressa is here. Do you want to talk to her? Can I? I thought it would be better if I didn't. Yes, but I think we can trust at least her. He moved his fingers with hesitation. Slowly but surely he reached for my hand and took it. Tressa gasped as he saw our fur turn dark and our eyes red. But once he took in Ryan's expression, there was a flash of recognition in her eyes. It was faint, no stronger than an intuition, but it was there. Erden, what's happening? This is Ryan. You two have met already. As Kagan said, there are two of them now, as a result of the Duke's actions. Ryan is his other side. Think of him as his other self, another Kagan, or his brother, if that is too difficult to grasp. Ryan rubbed our eyes, our ears so low they seemed stuck to the back of our head. He was still shaking, but he managed to give Tressa a smile. It's been a while, Tressa. Apparently it has. What's up with you? You look like you dropped your bone candy in the dirt. The mailman. He said that Hector died from a plague or something, but that's so stupid. Hector's a doctor, so he wouldn't die from that, right? The moment he brought up Hector, I think everything fit into place for Tressa. Ryan had told her about Hector before. In fact, he talked about him for so long that sometimes he covered her ears and pretended to take a nap just to get him to stop. Ryan looked different, but she still recognized him. I figured he wouldn't, so that's all? That's what got you so sad? Tressa nodded. Don't let something so stupid get you down. I'm sure Hector is fine. She wasn't trying to cheer him up. She really meant that. I guess neither of them considered that a doctor would be at the most risk in times of plague, but I kept the thought to myself. So, we played a lot together, right? Are you the one that likes pranks? Yeah. Ah, so the other Kagan was acting weird. He was just hiding you from me. He's so mean sometimes. Just sometimes. Like either you have any room to talk. Ryan smiled at that. Would it be strange to say that I found his smile soothing? Seeing him regain that mischievous vigor which he had lost in the monotony of chiseling away at wooden statues while he waited for Hector made me feel like perhaps everything would be all right. Maybe Hector would return eventually, or maybe he wouldn't. But at that moment I felt at peace, and that was all that mattered. As long as Ryan could feel some happiness, everything would be all right.